The ship was already moving when Lyra realized her father was not coming back. She had been pushed into a holding cell, barely large enough to sit in, on a vessel she did not recognize, surrounded by creatures she had never seen outside of diplomatic archives. Her wrists were bound with a polymer cord that hummed faintly when she moved. The smell was recycled air and machine oil, and something sour she chose not to identify. Through the small reinforced viewport, she watched the pale blue curve of her home planet shrink until it was just a dot, and then nothing at all. She was 19 years old. She was Velhari, and her father had just sold her to pay a debt she had never known existed. The Velhari were not a warrior species. They were traders, diplomats, record keepers. Their bodies were slim, their skin a deep silver blue that shifted faintly in emotional light. Their eyes wide and dark and built for reading fine print in low gravity. They had joined the Galactic Trade Coalition 40 years ago and had been perfectly unremarkable members ever since. Her father, Counselor Dren, had been one of the architects of 3 separate interspecies agreements. She had grown up believing he was a good man. The debt, she would later learn, was catastrophic. He had borrowed from the Vrekthi Syndicate to fund a failed colony venture. The Vrekthi did not accept credit arrangements. They accepted people. She did not cry. She was too cold for crying. She pressed her back against the wall and catalogued what she had. The cord on her wrists, one boot with a cracked heel, a memory chip tucked under her collar that her mother had given her before she died, which held nothing useful, only family recordings, and the ability to speak 9 languages, none of which currently seemed relevant. The cell door opened on the 3rd cycle. Not a Vrekthi guard, not a crew member, a human. Sucked, she had encountered humans exactly twice before. Both times at Coalition summits, where they stood in small groups looking simultaneously underdressed and over-caffeinated. Humans were relatively new to the Coalition. They had arrived 40 years ago, making enormous promises, and had spent the intervening decades mostly delivering on them, which had surprised everyone. They were shorter than most species, soft-skinned, disturbingly expressive, and operated on a peculiar combination of stubbornness and improvisation that other species found baffling. The galactic consensus on humans was that they were charming in small doses and exhausting in large ones. This one was leaning against her cell door frame, eating something from a foil packet. He was maybe 30, broad-shouldered, with close-cropped dark hair and the kind of face that looked like it had made a lot of questionable decisions and remembered most of them. He wore no uniform she recognized. His jacket had a patch on the shoulder that read Liberty Transit in faded lettering. He looked at her. She looked at him. He said in passable Velhari, "You look like someone who could use a less terrible day." She stared at him. "I'm Cal," he said. "Calvin Mercer. I'm not with the Vrekthi. I'm a cargo runner, independent contractor. My ship got impounded at the last station, and they put me on this vessel as labor until I work off the docking fee, which is the single stupidest thing that has ever happened to me, and I have a very long list." She said nothing. "Okay," he said. "That's fine. You don't have to talk. I just wanted you to know there's a human on this ship who thinks this whole situation is deeply wrong and is working on it." "Working on what?" she said. "Getting you out," he said. She had not expected that. "You don't know me," she said. "I know enough," he said. "I know you're here against your will. That's enough." He offered her the foil packet. It smelled like processed grain and something vaguely sweet. She was hungry enough to take it. That was the first conversation. She did not trust him. She was not built for trust at that particular moment in her life. But she watched him over the following cycles and noted things. He worked hard when the guards were watching and smarter when they were not. He mapped the ship's layout through a series of casual, wandering trips to fetch supplies. He talked to everyone, every species on board, in fragments of their own language, and he did it in a way that looked accidental but was absolutely not. He was building something. She could see the architecture of it, even if she did not yet know what it would become. On the 5th cycle, he crouched outside her cell and slid a small object under the door. It was a polymer cutter, modified, compact enough to hide in a closed fist. 2 nights, he said quietly. I need 2 more nights to sort the route. Can you be ready? She looked at the cutter. She looked at him. Why? She said. What do you get out of this? He was quiet for a moment. Nothing, he said. That's the point. She did not sleep that night. She turned the cutter over in her hands in the dark and thought about what kind of species produces a person who helps strangers for no reason in a universe that runs entirely on transactions. She did not have an answer, but she held on to the cutter, and she waited. The plan was not elegant. Cal had made that clear from the start, which she found oddly reassuring. Elegant plans were plans built by people who had enough resources to be clever. This was a plan built by a human with no resources and an unreasonable amount of nerve, which turned out to be its own kind of architecture. She had spent the 2 waiting cycles studying him without being obvious about it. He was the kind of person who smiled at guards, not the fake smile of someone performing friendliness, but the real one. The one that said he had already decided he was going to be fine and was generously extending that assumption to whoever was nearby. The guards did not know what to do with it. Most of them smiled back. That was the foundation of the whole operation. His name in full was Calvin Mercer, originally from a place called Tucson, Arizona, which she looked up on the memory chip her mother had given her because it turned out the chip also held a basic galactic geography index she had forgotten about. Tucson was a desert city, hot, dry, flat, surrounded by things that could kill you. She thought that probably explained something about him, though she could not have said exactly what. On the 7th cycle, at the 3rd hour of the ship's artificial night, her cell door opened. Cal was on the other side. He had a bag over one shoulder and the expression of someone who had already committed to something and was now simply executing it. "Cut your wrists free," he said, quietly. She used the modified cutter. The cord dropped in 2 seconds. "Follow me," he said. "Don't run until I run. If I start talking loudly to someone, stop moving and look at the floor. Don't look at their faces." "You've done this before," she said. "Once," he said. "It went badly, and I learned things." They moved through the corridor. The ship was a mid-range hauler, Vrekthi-owned but crew-diverse, carrying mixed cargo across 3 coalition trade routes. Cal walked like he belonged in every section of it, which was functionally the same as belonging there. She stayed close and kept her eyes down, and breathed through the part of her brain that wanted to calculate odds. A guard rounded the corner. Cal raised his hand in a casual greeting and launched into a complaint about the temperature regulation in the lower cargo bay. He spoke in Vrekthi trade tongue, mildly, with the tone of someone mildly annoyed, but not enough to make it anyone else's problem. The guard grunted and moved on. She did not look up until the footsteps faded. They reached the docking corridor. Cal pressed a panel beside a secondary hatch, and it opened on a short passage that connected to a small auxiliary craft, not much larger than a personal shuttle. Old, clearly not factory condition. It smelled like someone had lived in it for a very long time. "This is your ship?" she said. "This is my ship," he said. "It's very small." "It works," he said. "Usually." She got in. He ran a launch sequence that looked like it had been memorized through repetition rather than training, his hands moving fast and confident across a board that had at least two clearly repaired components held together by something that was not the original fastener. She sat in the co-pilot chair because it was the only other seat and watched him work. "They'll notice we're gone within 4 hours," he said. "The Vrekti will file a coalition report. Your father's name will be in it." She said nothing. "I'm not saying that to hurt you," he said. "I know," she said. The ship detached. No alarms, no immediate pursuit. The haulers shrank behind them, and Kal exhaled a long breath and then laughed, a short, involuntary sound, like relief coming out sideways. "Okay," he said. "Phase 1. "How many phases are there?" she said. "Depends on how Phase 2 goes," he said. She looked out the viewport. Open space. The hauler already small behind them. Ahead, nothing specific. Just direction and distance, and the faint scatter of stars that her people had named for their shapes, and his people had numbered for their coordinates. "Where are we going?" she said. "Neutral station," he said. "Kovari outpost. It's not beautiful, but it's outside Vrekti jurisdiction, and they have a coalition rep office. You can file a petition. Your case is valid under 3 different statutes. I looked it up." "You looked up coalition law," she said. I looked up a lot of things," he said. "In 2 days. I read fast when I'm motivated." She turned that over quietly. "Why did they impound your ship?" she said. He made a small, pained face. "I was carrying cargo that turned out to belong to someone who had not technically paid for it to be delivered. I did not know that when I took the job. The station held my vessel as collateral while the ownership dispute got sorted, which takes roughly forever in coalition court. So I took the labor arrangement to avoid a holding cell." He paused. "And then I found you." "And abandoned your arrangement," she said. "The arrangement was not great anyway." "You've made yourself a criminal," she said, "for someone you don't know." He looked over at her briefly. The cockpit was small enough that there was very little distance between them. His face in the instrument glow was thoughtful in the way that people looked when they were being honest, instead of performing. "You're how my grandmother," he said, "used to say that the measure of a person is what they do when the doing costs them something. I think about that a lot. Probably too much." He turned back to the controls. "Go to sleep if you can. Kovari is 20 hours out." She did not sleep. She sat in the co-pilot chair and watched the stars and thought about a woman she had never met who had raised a man who crossed a ship in artificial night to open a cell door for a stranger. The grief for her father came then, and she let it because it was real and it was hers and it had nowhere else to go. Kal did not comment on the fact that her skin shifted toward gray, the Velhari way of weeping. He just quietly turned up the temperature in the cockpit by 2 degrees. She noticed. She did not say anything. But she noticed. Kovari Outpost was not beautiful. Kal had been accurate about that. It was a pressurized ring station built during the early coalition expansion, the kind of infrastructure that had been functional 40 years ago and had since been repeatedly repaired rather than replaced, so that the whole structure had a quality of architectural honesty about it. Nothing pretending to be more than it was. Everything working because someone had decided it should keep working. They docked at the civilian bay. Kal paid the fee with what looked like the last of a very thin account balance, and she filed that away without commenting on it. The coalition rep office was on the 3rd ring. The rep herself was a tall Marin named Osi, who had clearly seen everything the universe had to offer and had formed strong opinions about most of it. She listened to Lyra's account without interruption. She cross-referenced 3 databases. She typed something with 2 of her 4 hands while reviewing Lyra's identification with the other 2. The transaction your father filed is categorized under the Vrekthi Debt Exchange Protocol, Aussie said, which the Coalition technically permits in a framework that was negotiated before anyone looked at it closely enough. We've been trying to revise it for 11 years. She set down her stylus. However, the debt was incurred without your knowledge or consent. Under Velhari family law, which the Coalition recognizes, you were not a valid party to the arrangement. Your father did not have legal authority to include you. So it's void, Cal said. It's contestable, Aussie said, which is slower than void but gets to the same place eventually. She looked at Lyra. I can file a protective petition today. It will flag you in the system as disputed status, which means the Vrekthi cannot legally transact you further while the case is open. You'd be in a holding pattern. How long? Lyra said. 6 months. Possibly 8. And where does she go in the meantime? Cal said. Aussie looked at him with a particular expression of someone noting that he had made this problem his problem without being asked. Technically, she'd be assigned to Coalition temporary residency, Usi said. Kovari has a residency block. It's not unpleasant. It's a holding cell with a window, Cal said. It's better than the alternative, Usi said. Lyra looked at the desk between them. She thought about the residency block, the 6 months, the 8 months, the waiting. She thought about her father. She thought about the family recordings on her memory chip. She was not going to think about those for a while. File the petition, she said. OC filed it. The timestamp read 11 minutes past the hour. That was the moment Lyra's status changed from property to person in dispute, which was not the same as free but was measurably better than where she had started the week. They left the office and stood in the corridor outside, and Cal looked at the wall for a moment in the way that people did when they were recalculating. I have a contact here, he said. Another independent runner. She owes me a favor from a cargo situation 2 years ago. She might have a route that needs a second crew member. Velhari are good with documentation and negotiation, and you speak 9 languages. You remembered that, Lyra said. You mentioned it in the cell, he said. He's the first night. She had not realized she'd told him that. She had been cold and exhausted and possibly not tracking everything she said. You're trying to find me work, she said. I'm trying to find us work, he said. I've got no ship and no cargo contract, and a coalition record that currently shows an incomplete labor arrangement, which looks bad on a run sheet. I need a clean job. You need income and something to do for 6 months that isn't sitting in a residence block, getting told your case is still pending. So this is practical, she said. It's both, he said plainly. The corridor was busy. Covery mid-cycle always was. Traders and crew and a dozen species moving with a particular focused chaos of people who had places to be. Cal stood in it like he was exactly where he was supposed to be, and what she was beginning to understand was simply how he existed in the world. I don't know how to trust people right now, she said. I know, he said. I might be bad at this, she said. I'm not asking you to be good at it, he said. I'm asking you to try it once more, that's all. She looked at him for a long moment. His face was open in the way she had noticed before, that quality of not performing anything, not asking her to perform anything back. One job, she said. Well, it's one job, he agreed. The contact's name was Nina Voss, and she was sitting in the Kovari docking bar with a mug of something hot and a data pad, and the expression of someone who had been waiting long enough to form mild resentment about it. She looked at Cal. She looked at Lyra. "You owe me an explanation," she said to Cal. "I owe you a favor," he said. "Same thing." "Sit down," Nina said. "Both of you." Nina Voss ran a two-person courier vessel called the Open Margin, which was a name Cal said he respected philosophically. She was 34, originally from Seattle, with short red hair and a habit of tapping her fingers against any flat surface while she thought, which she did a lot. She had been running independent cargo and courier routes for 8 years without a single major incident, which in her own words meant she was either very skilled or very lucky, and she had stopped trying to figure out which. She had a job, a documentation transfer job, which was exactly the kind of work Lyra was built for. A research coalition on the station Calvin 3 needed original treaty records, moved physically to a secondary archive on a different station, because their digital systems had been compromised in a relay failure, and they did not trust a second transmission until the vulnerability was patched. The records needed a verified handler, someone who could read, authenticate, and log the documents in transit, and someone with credentials or the functional equivalent. "I have 9 languages and 3 years of diplomatic archive training," Lyra said. Nina looked at her. "You're Velhari?" "Yes." "Velhari with a coalition protective petition on file," Nina said. She looked at Cal. "You brought me a complicated situation. I brought you a qualified handler and a second crew member who does not complain," Cal said. "Also, I'll work the cargo bay for the whole run. No extra pay." Nina tapped her fingers against the table. "The job pays well enough to split 3 ways and still be worth it. Calvin, 3 is 12 days out. The run is legal, documented, low risk." She paused. "And I've been running solo for 4 months, and it's making me strange." "Stranger," Cal said. "Do you want the job or not?" Nina said. Lyra looked at the table. 12 days. Real work. A reason to get up in the morning that wasn't waiting for bureaucracy to process her out of someone else's definition of her. "Yes," she said. "Good," Nina said. "We leave in 6 hours. Don't be late. I don't wait." The run to Calvin 3 was not eventful by the standards of people who had led eventful lives. It was, by Lyra's current standards, the most stable 12 days she had experienced in recent memory. The Open Margin was a well-organized ship. Nina ran it with the precision of someone who had learned through costly mistakes exactly where she wanted everything to be. Lyra learned the filing system on day 2 and had it optimized by day 4, which made Nina look at her with the particular respect of someone recognizing a professional. Cal worked the cargo bay without complaint. He was not a delicate worker, he was a practical one. He moved things efficiently, secured them correctly, and spent whatever time remained reading on a battered data pad or talking to Lyra in the small galley during off-cycle hours. They talked about a lot of things. Not the big things, not immediately. They talked about small things. The 9 languages. The Velhari naming system for stars. His description of Tucson in the summer. The heat that hit you like something with intent. The way the sky turned a color at dusk that he said was not reproducible anywhere else in the galaxy, which she found improbable, and he maintained was true. She asked about his family. He had a mother still living in Tucson, a younger brother in the coalition fleet, and what he called a complicated relationship with the concept of staying anywhere too long. "That seems hard," she said. "It's what I know," he said. "Kovari, then the next station, then the next job. I'm good at it." "Are you happy at it?" she said. He was quiet for a moment. Not uncomfortable, just honest. "Some days," he said. More days than not. She told him about her mother, who had died when Lyra was 12. She told him about the archive training, the years of learning to handle documents that were older than some planets. The feeling of holding a treaty in her hands that had ended a war. The weight of that. She did not tell him yet about her father. There was time for that, and she was not ready. On day 9, they encountered a Vrekti patrol, standard coalition corridor. The patrol had authority to request documentation from any vessel in the lane. Nina pulled them to a stop and ran the check cleanly, because the open margin had nothing to hide. Cal came forward from the cargo bay and stood in the corridor behind the cockpit. Lyra sat very still. The patrol officer ran their registration, ran Nina's credentials, ran Cal's, then got to Lyra. The protective petition came up on his screen. She could see his expression shift in the way that people's expressions shifted when they were reading something that required a decision. Disputed status, the officer said. Filed 11 days ago, Lyra said. Coalition Rep Office, Kovari. Aussie of the Maharan Rep Corps. Documentation reference number available on request. The officer looked at her for a long moment. Cal had moved, without drama or announcement, to stand in the open space beside her chair. Not in front of her, us not performing anything. Just present, the way a wall was present. The officer looked at the screen again, looked at the documentation number Lyra had cited, entered it. The petition came back verified. Carry on, he said. They moved. Nina let out a breath. Cal went back to the cargo bay. Lyra sat with her hands flat on her knees until the patrol ship was out of range. You memorize the reference number, Nina said. I memorize everything, Lyra said. Good habit, Nina said. Lyra looked at the viewport. Outside, the corridor was clear. She had not needed saving in that moment. She had saved herself, with a number she had filed into memory and held like a tool. But Cal had stood beside her anyway, not to speak, not to act, just to be a body that meant she was not alone. She was going to have to think about what that meant to her. She was going to have to start trusting the answer. The documents reached Culvin 3 intact. Lyra logged each one. Agas authenticated the chain of custody, filed the transfer records in triplicate under Coalition Archival Standard, and handed the research coordinator a report that the coordinator described as the most thorough transfer documentation she had seen in 6 years of running that archive. The coordinator offered her a 6-month contract on the spot. Lyra stood at the desk and felt the shape of that offer. 6 months. A real position. Income, residency, structure, a place to be while the coalition petition processed. She thought about the residency block on Kovari that Cal had called a holding cell with a window. She thought about Nina's ship. She thought about the conversation in the galley about Tucson's summers and stars with names versus stars with numbers. I'll take it, she said. Excellent, the coordinator said. You can start immediately. She found Cal in the docking bay. He was helping Nina do a post-run check on the cargo holds, by writing things down on a physical notepad the way he apparently did everything by hand in case the system failed. They offered me a contract, she said. He looked up. Here? 6 months, archival work. It's legitimate and it covers residency. He looked at the notepad for a moment, then nodded. That's good. That's really good. It is, she said. There was a pause. The open margin could use a regular documentation handler, Nina said, not looking up from the cargo bay floor, like for future runs, if someone wanted to do both. You're offering me recurring work, Lyra said. I'm noting it as an option, Nina said. No pressure. Lyra looked at Cal. He was looking at the middle distance in the way people did when they were trying not to influence a decision. You could stay on the station, she said to him. Kavari was eating your savings. Calvin 3 has a better rate for independent contractors. I looked it up. You looked up my options, he said. I look up everything, she said. Apparently we have that in common. He laughed, the same short, involuntary sound as on the night they left the hauler, relief coming out sideways. All right, he said. I'll file for a berth. The next 6 months were not a story of dramatic events. They were a story of smaller things. Lyra in the archive each morning, handling documents that mattered, doing work that was hers. Cal picking up cargo contracts from a station that actually paid him fairly. Nina coming through every 3 weeks with a run that needed an extra hand. The three of them eating in the station cafeteria on Nina's layover days, talking about roots and politics and the ongoing absurdity of coalition bureaucracy and the Tucson sky at dusk. The petition resolved in the 5th month. Vrekti Debt Exchange Protocol, contested under Velhari family law. Her father had been required to appear before a coalition mediation panel. She had not been present. Apparently, she had submitted a statement and let the record speak. The ruling came back in her favor and was added to a growing body of case law that the coalition was quietly using to dismantle the protocol from the inside. Aussie sent her the ruling with a short note that said simply, "Well done." She read it twice, filed it, went back to work. Cal came to find her that evening. He had the datapad and the particular expression of someone who had been thinking about something for a long time and had decided it was time to stop thinking and start saying. I've been on Kovari, he said. Then here. Both times I stayed because there was a reason to. She waited. That's new for me, he said. The staying. I know, she said. I don't know how good I'll be at it, he said. That's not me making excuses. And that's me being honest about a real limitation I'm working on. I know that too, she said. Okay, he said. I just wanted to make sure we were starting from the same place. We are, she said. The station's observation deck was open at this hour, the viewport looking out at the same kind of scatter of stars she had watched from his cockpit on the night she stopped waiting to see if she could trust him. They were different stars. She was a different version of herself, only he was standing next to her the same way he had stood next to her on the ship. When the patrol officer was reading the screen, not in front of her, not behind her, beside her. Your grandmother was right, she said. She usually was, he said. She looked at the stars. His people called them numbers. Her people called them names. Both approaches were trying to hold on to something that kept moving. She thought maybe that was the right metaphor for most things worth holding on to. Tell me about Tucson, she said. And he did.